6th meeting of the Museums and Cultural Arts Commission to order. Roll call, Francesca.
Commissioner Casali,
Here.
Commissioner Holden,
Here.
Commissioner
Here.
Commissioner
Here.
Commissioner
Here. Okay, so now we have the items, consent items, which include the September 1st commission minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Go ahead.
Second.
Oh, I was late last, I was here. We need a party to.
Oh, if you look at the top in the commissioner absent, it says none. So it was just when roll call. But both, but it does say that you both arrived.
That's okay.
And in item 4, under personal appearance, it says that this item will be agendized at the next Board of Library
gosh.
Trustees meeting. Are we going to get a report on that? Oh, okay. All right. Then we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It's unanimous. Okay, the next thing we have is public comments. If there's anyone that wants to speak on any topic not on the current agenda, now is your time. Please come to the podium or raise your hand on Zoom.
Yes. And for anyone who may be watching, I'll just briefly share that you can connect to this meeting by going to isearchmonterey.org. The call-in telephone number is 833-568-8864. The meeting ID is 161-622-2299. If prompted to enter a participant ID, press pound. And there are no public speakers, Chair Evans.
Okay, so now we'll move on to informational and staff reports. So the first one we have here is from our Library and Museums Director, Brian.
Thank you, Chair Evans. I appreciate it. First off, I want to start off by congratulating Jordan here, Jordan Leininger, for accepting a role as our regular part-time artifact specialist with the Museums Department. He started his position on October 1st. And I know Jordan has worked diligently throughout the pandemic, really supporting every component here with the museums. And he's been very helpful for me, joining on to library and museums, of connecting me with the community and giving me oversight of everything and any kind of issues, and just working he's a great partner here with the museums. I really appreciate everything. So I'm happy to bring Jordan along with more hours here to support our museum activities. I think it was a great move. And Jordan can speak more if he'd like at the next part in his, but with the Western Flyer model, I brought that up with the Board of Library Trustees. They were in agreement that the best role would be to display the model near the staff service desk, so it's in a safe spot. We're in the middle of, and to display it during Cannery Row days. So right now we're in the middle of getting new self-checkout machines, which are going to be kiosk units over there at the Monterey Public Library. And so those are freestanding kiosks with adjustable height. So those would move the current self-checkout desk, which has a long wooden table, right next to the desk. So our thought is basically to move that, the Western Flyer model over there to be, so it'd be right adjacent to where the staff are, so staff can have any questions. If we want to put any kind of temporary display there to highlight Cannery Row days, it'd be right there next to the staff area. And our timeline for our new self-checkout machines is roughly 8 to 12 weeks. And I believe Cannery Road Days is going to be early 2023. So hopefully this kind of timeline aligns for everybody. There was Commissioner Thomas reached out regarding the Sardines in a Can installation at San Carlos Beach. This is a installation that was installed, I believe, in the early 90s. If I'm correct.
92 and 93.
92, 93. But it's right there, and there's no drainage on it right now, so that it's currently full of sand. So anything we would have to do if we want to get that cleared out of sand, we have to work with the city and public works to get kind of a maintenance budget, a maintenance cost to clear out all that sand and make sure that the Sardines in a Can art installation is there. So I don't have a cost of that yet because we're trying to like a direct cost, but we're trying to figure out how much that would cost and what we can do to get that cleared out. And if there's any kind of long-term plan for that as well. The Japanese American Heritage Center. Thank you, Tim, again, for giving myself and Nat a tour of the center along with Larry Oda. And asked Tim about getting the scan of there's a 1945 Ricketts petition that his wife worked on, there's live-in wife. And Jordan reached out to CSUMB and got a high resolution scan. And I know Jordan is working on best way to present that for the PBL. So the thought is that how to get something that was created there on Ricketts typewriter there and signed in support by Steinbeck and all the community, just in support of the Japanese Americans in 1945. So I think that'd be a great way to kind of connect everything there.
Besides Ricketts, I wondered if the Heritage Center has a copy of a book by Ansel Adams. I think this is the only book that he.
Mike, your mic.
This is the only book that he wrote that wasn't about photography, but he wrote about the internment, and he was also one of the local leaders in support of the Japanese Americans coming back. I don't know the title, but it'll be easily found. And I think the library should have a copy, and also the Heritage Center. I think we have one. They have one?
Any of those things, I think we have to figure out as a larger plan, especially with the libraries and museums on digitizing and how to put things out there. And that'll be part of a later work plan too. The Path of History, I've submitted the request for a proposal for city review to get a final review of everything, and reached out to a couple of our commissioners here just for feedback. This is the $30,000 the community Monterey Community Foundation through the Community Impact Grant through the Thomas Dowd Sr. and Anita M. Dowd Fund to do 2 new walks, one of them in the the Pearl District, and another one based out of Colton Hall. So once we can get a consultant working with that, we are looking for that for later this year, early 2023 to start working on that. So we start working on that with the commission. And our Young Readers Mural, we are, our contract has been drafted and submitted to the city attorney's office. This is something went through the Board of Library Trustees, then here to Museum of Cultural Arts, and then up to City Council and was approved. This is for the mural in honor of Barbara Sovereign on our library terrace. So we're hoping to start this project as well soon and get that started. And our Colton Hall Constitution reenactment is scheduled for Sunday, October 16th at 2 p.m. So please make sure you register. Make sure if you can attend, please attend. We're having it the first time live since 2019. And Jordan has been working hard on making sure that the folks have a place to practice. They've been in Colton Hall regularly practicing. And there's, I put on this, there's no updates for the grants I applied for. I did get approval. This is for the collection assessment for preservation for Colton Hall. So that's something I'll have to work on with the museum staff shortly. And California Revealed, still waiting to hear back from that. So with that, any questions or comments from the commissioners or the public?
I'd like to thank you for applying for those grants. What specifically is the collection assessment for preservation, Brian?
That's an Institute of Museum and Library Services. It's an IMLS grant. And what it is that somebody comes in and just inspects your facility, your storage, how do you present things. And it's really about making sure, I know there's some older reports from Colton Hall in terms of how are we presenting like the original signatures lines and how are we doing the original documents. So it's about some of that work is about how do you store your documents? How do you catalog your documents? Are they safely kept? And it's similar to the PG Natural History Museum just recently went through this as well. They received the grant in 2020. So I reached out to them as well about their experience with that because they have a lot of different items that they were cataloging. And I know we do have a lot of items of ours on Past Perfect, and which is digital record, but also just making sure what are our current practices for putting original documents out there for the public and the state of the building and everything. So that was that was an Institute of Museum and Library Services grant that they do annually for small and medium-sized museums.
One other quick question. Congratulations to Jordan. It's well deserved. But what is the status of the other halftime position?
So with that, I've been, as Jordan's position just got pushed into our budget as of October 1st, I've been working with our city budget staff to making sure we have the right funding allocated for that. So we'll be going forward with that. I'm going to be looking at that meeting with the budget team next week to go forward to figure out what the next steps are with that.
Can I ask you,
We have your mic
Oh.
too.
yeah. So about possibly extending the hours to the music, to like Colton Hall and that kind of thing? Is that something that's in the planning department then?
I think we could probably look at that. That'll be on because that's not, I can't speak too much on it because it's not on the report for the hours. I think if we look at the strategic priorities, we can look at that about adding it on there. But as of right now, I haven't discussed that with Jordan about specifically working his hours on that. Because he spreads so far out, really not having him. We have our museum attendants working on that. So we may have to work on, if we add another person, what are the roles of that person and what are the hours going to be and everything with that. But there's nothing concrete right now. I know we're at right now Saturdays and Sundays.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? Thank you, Brian. So now our next item is the Museums and Cultural Arts Division Activity Report. And which one of you wants to take that one? Okay,
That would be me.
all right, Jordan, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian and Commissioner Bukowski for the nice words. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be at this status now after it's been 6 years now that I've been with the museum. So very excited. But now I'm more busy. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm looking forward to completing projects now instead of just work or having projects. Now I can work on them. So I'll first start with, as Director Edwards mentioned, with the Colton Hall, the convention reenactment. I started opening up Wednesdays, Monday through Wednesdays for the troupe to come in and rehearse. Signups went live over the weekend, and I think we currently have about 8 people signed up for a max of 50. I do need to ask one commissioner to step up. In 2019, we had Commissioner Peak do an opening for the event. So I was hoping that we could get another commissioner to say something. I can send you what we did 3 years ago now. What Commissioner Peak said, we can tweak it, do whatever. But so if there's a commissioner who would like to do that, just contact me and we'll get that set up. Let's see, make sure I'm on the page here. All right, so we're having some changes at the Pacific Biological Laboratories. And so this last year, I've spent a lot of Saturdays there for the tours, and I've noticed that we turn a lot of people away. And that's just because there's a current tour going on and we're limited on the 5 tours per day. And we try to let people come in between tours to take a look around. And so I held a meeting with our docents and wanted to talk with them because they are our passionate team who loves and cares for that place. And after they agreed and liked the new format, and Director Edwards approved it. And so what we're going to do now, instead of having the 9 a.m., 10:30, 12:30, 2 o'clock, 3:30 tours, we're going to have the 9 o'clock and 10:30 tours still as scheduled. That gives the people who really love the history there a chance to come in and have an in-depth tour, private, 15 people max. And then from 12:30 till 4, we're just going to leave it as open house so that people can come in and go as they please. People are constantly going up and down Cannery Row saying, oh, I got to go whale watching. Can I come back later? Or, I started noting how many people we declined and then how many people we just brought in as walk-ins. And this last month, we had more walk-ins than we had people sign up for tours. And so we didn't get this in time to implement it for October or next weekend, or actually this weekend, I'm sorry. But we will implement this in November to see how it goes. Then we take December off for Christmas and the Adobes, and then we'll continue in January. And if it works out, great. If not, we can always go back. And I'm also trying to work on implementing a new display in the lab upstairs. Like Director Edwards mentioned, I have a high resolution scan of the petition. I'd like to put that in there, and maybe some other personal items or books, and keep them in a secure display case that I might be able to retrofit for the lab. And so hopefully I will be able to work on that soon. And then you may have noticed that we have a observer today. So this is Deja Freddy. She is a CSUMB service learner. And so she has been helping collecting metadata on our Myron Oliver photo collection. She's documenting what's on the photos, everything, putting it into a spreadsheet. So then eventually I can scan those photos and put them in our software and make them available and referenceable, because as of right now, they're just sitting in a drawer. And so she's been doing a great job. This might be the fastest we've had a service learner, because she's going to finish her hours this weekend. So we're happy to have Deja aboard. Thank you. I was fortunate enough to attend a ceremony at the Bouchard Monument this last month. The Argentinian Consulate General, Ruben Eduardo Carre, came and reached out to other locals, David Bolton, the executive director of the California Mission Foundation, and CSUMB professor of archaeology, Ruben Mendoza. And they brought their own Argentinian flag, and they had a ceremony, raised the flag. And it was a really neat experience. They were very passionate about the history here, and very adamant that Bouchard not be referenced as a pirate and more as a privateer. And I guess there's a California law stating that. But it was a really amazing ceremony, and we have now been given the offer of every time we need to replace that flag, just to call him up and he'll send us a new one. All right, and I'm for this next one, I'm sad that Dennis is not here, but last month we attended the Monterey County Historical Society's annual barbecue fundraiser, and Dennis Copeland, former museums manager and archivist, was honored for his service to Monterey County and Monterey. And so despite the wind and rain, Director Edwards, myself, and former museums admin assistant Claire Rigg was there and attended, and we were happy to cheer on Dennis for this honor. And then I got to have a unique experience. The Daughters of the American Revolution asked me to do a presentation of the Colton Hall Constitution Convention of 1849. So for a few hours, I got to be an honorary daughter. But I did a PowerPoint, I got lunch. It was a lot of fun. I got to talk history, and there was about 25 daughters in attendance, and it was very interesting to see how very formal and the ceremonial things that they still do, that they've been doing for well over 100 years now. And last on the list is, let's see, parking day. We haven't done this since 2019, or the city at least. And this is a day where it's a nationwide event where they take over parking spaces for public use. And so this year, with it still being kind of pandemic-like, only the city of Monterey participated in it, not the community. And so different divisions set up parklets and parking spots on downtown Alvarado Street. And so myself and Sarah Nolan of the Monterey Public Library set up a parklet where we had, on the museum side, we had brochures, some free coins and posters to hand out just to get awareness out. And then the library had books and was able to sign people up for library cards, as it was Library Card Month, I believe. And so it was a lot of fun. We got a lot of people coming through, got a lot of brochures out there, and was able to talk about future events. And it was a success, and I look forward to attending again next year. And that is everything.
So, questions? Go ahead, Mike. Do
Oh,
you have a question?
Or Bill. So is the PBL then going to be open every Saturday in November? Or
No, that'll still be the second Saturday.
Second Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know if it were appropriate, but in the future, if it were appropriate, could you invite the commission to events like the Bouchard Monument?
Sure. Yeah, that one was kind of a last minute
Yeah.
put together where they said, hey, this is happening on this day. And then with my schedule and everything, I didn't have time to or think about it. So I do apologize for that, but
That's right.
definitely anytime anything like that comes up, I will make sure to have the commission involved. But I also have to look into that, because if every commissioner comes, then we have to make it a,
We could still have a representative from the commission. We-
yeah.
I don't think it's if it's that kind of a meeting where we're not speaking or that, I don't think it's a Brown Act issue.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's not regarding the
Yeah.
agenda item, but I will say, yeah, that was on me. Basically, I had another meeting that day too with the city administration, and I asked Jordan to take my place to attend, because
Yeah.
it was a pretty short kind of lead up to it, and they didn't want a big program at that time. But I think like the day before or something was, hey, who's going to attend? And so it was,
Yeah, the night before they said, okay, you want to involve media? After we asked, like, do you want us to contact the media? And they're like, no. And then the night before they were like, okay, whatever, do whatever.
so we'll definitely get you guys connected. And I do think, just like what Jordan was saying about, Colton Hall, though, if we can have commissioners attend anything that we have changes on that, I think it'd be fantastic to see.
One thing, Jordan, when we made the documentary film on the petitions, the filmmaker got a hold of the exact same kind of typewriter that they used. And by the way, Ricketts family actually has the typewriter,
Mhm.
but he's looking for a home for that. So you guys could use that one. It's the exact same one that Ricketts had. So,
Okay.
and it's in San Francisco, I think, but we can get it down here.
Okay, that would be great.
Question on the sort of the open house for the lab. Are the docents going to stay all that time?
Yes.
And they're okay with that?
Yes, they're actually excited about it because it gives people opportunity to come in and that you can do kind of miniature tours. And so I haven't had the time to actually put a guide together yet, but basically I would like a minimum of 3 docents, possibly 4, to be there. 1 person at the door just for crowd control, so we don't go over limit. And then 1 person to kind of monitor downstairs in the backyard. So if someone wants to go downstairs, like they can take them down there and monitor it, and then have 2 docents upstairs, 1 in each room. And they can talk about the history, whatever they want. I mean, after 6 years in museums and being at Colton Hall a lot, you start to learn, like, when people just want to look around compared to getting a tour, because you start talking to people and then their eyes glaze over. And so with this, I've sat in so many tours now this last year and a half, that you can kind of see people just sitting there for an hour, or sometimes some certain docents might keep someone in the front room for 45 minutes, just sitting there in a stuffy room talking about all this stuff instead of showing them around. And this gets around that you can collect, different people can come in and listen, talk about whatever, and go around and like they can ask questions like, oh, what's this, or what happened here? And yeah, hopefully it will be a success.
And Chair Evans, can I add on that real quick? Sorry, John.
Are the docents gonna be in various rooms?
Yes, yeah, it'll be, no one will be unattended in the building.
And just to add on that for the door, one thing that Jordan and I talked about was accessibility and having a link to the video, the tour near the base, so that people, if there's any accessibility concerns of coming up the stairs, that we could show them the virtual tour, because not everyone can get upstairs to that. So we want to make sure that anybody that comes up to the museum during those open hours can access a visual tour of it as well.
So I'm sorry, how are you going to handle that?
So the plan, do you want to?
Sure. So right now, at a minimum, I have a piece of paper that has a QR code, which is like a barcode that your phone can scan. And so from down there, they can scan it with their phone, and it'll either take them to the website, or it'll take them to the YouTube video, like the virtual tour that we have of it, automatically on their phone, and they can look at that anytime they want then.
So that's something you just hand to them
Or it'll be posted downstairs, so that
out front?
out front,
the
yeah,
bottom of the stairs. I
yeah.
think that ought to be there full time.
Well, there's a couple of issues with that. One is people take things when they're just posted on buildings. And then two, I would like to keep the facade as clean as possible, of not putting banners or pieces of paper. I might be able to, the thought is there's a little side rail that sticks out of the building that I can put something on there, so that when people take pictures of the building head on, they don't see that piece of paper or banner that's sitting there, and so that it still looks historically clean, but has information available.
Yeah, good, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, moving right along. So now we come to our first public appearance item, which is the museums and cultural arts to discuss fiscal year 22-23 priorities and our strategic plan. So let's see, who wants to start that? Brian, do you want to take the lead on that?
Sure. So thank you, Chair Evans. And we met recently, the two of us met recently to myself, and I believe it was Chair Evans and Commissioner Wichkowski. I think forget who else was on there that I'm missing right now. That
I was not on the subcommittee.
okay, sorry, I'm missing it out. Who was that?
Bill and John
Bill and John. All right.
and
Yeah, I think Mike.
Oh, Mike.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Mike.
Mike's on.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I think we looked at it, and after going forward, what's feasible for, this coming year for the 22-23, as well as going forward. So this is really about what's feasible for fiscal year 22-23, but then we added on items on here, proposed priority for 23-24, so they're not really lost. So that was one of the thoughts, is not to lose sight of something that we could get on the next strategic plan of the next year. So with that, highlighting on the facilities, one, the Colton Hall Museum and Old Monterey Jail. So part of that is I took off the due date of, there were several items on here on the past draft that said completed and completed, but it was still priority A. So I felt that they haven't really been implemented yet, so that's not truly completed. There's been discussions about what to do, but it hasn't been completed. So I think if it was completed, we would mark it off of being a priority A on that. But there was a subcommittee, as you'll see on the comments, the subcommittee identified short-term goals for for Colton Hall, and discuss the use of technology in exhibits. And there's, the tasks in there to review old jail historic structure report, improve old jail interpretation based on historic structure report. I think one thing to add on here is, if because I didn't get the grant approval in that time, I'm hoping that that collection assessment for preservation grant somebody will be able to go in there to talk to us about some of the things like in the old jail and talk to us about the Colton Hall and the mortar used and those kind of things to just make sure we have all those up to date on there. But I do think that's a priority for this fiscal year, especially with the grant to really discuss and look at that. Worker shacks and Bruce Harris Way. One thing I think would be good way to do this is to look at Bruce Harris Way has a couple different items in there that need repair. So I put those on as tasks. As one is identify grant funding to repair the Kennery Row worker shacks because those have some rotted wood in them right now. The Kalisa statue has a damaged wine bottle or wine glass, I should say, correct? So wine glass, somebody's damaged it, so she just has a empty hand right now. And the Bruce Harris mural and having that either replaced or giving a historical, like a digital photo turned into a metal on metal so that we have something more sustainable there on that. So I wanted to put all three of these as one on there. So Bruce Harris Way so that we could look at possibly a grant for that entire set of needs on Bruce Harris Way rather than just focusing on just the Kennery Row shacks or just Kalisa to just put forward. And that might be a community Foundation of Monterey request for this upcoming fiscal year. So that's why I was talking with the ad hoc subcommittee on that. The Kennery Row worker shacks was previously submitted as an NCIP request, has not yet been approved. And I put a note in here, the mural needs to be replaced or restored and the wood is rotting. You can see the bottom, if you go down there on Bruce Harris Way, the bottom wood has started to fall off and who the painter's name is missing and who funded it, it's missing and the paint itself is peeling off. And I know Commissioner Thomas has mentioned that he has access to the original so that we could possibly get like a high quality digital photo of it and just reprint that as like on metal. So that's a possibility in there. I think on proposed priority, so instead of saying A and B, as was mentioning here, 2023 and 2024 Pacific Biological Labs. And this is some more information, like we have the restoration of the Pdl floors, which is something that I've talked to Jordan a bit about, and some concerns on those floors, but also keeping them historically accurate. There's always the Pdl 88 access to second floor. But I think we will see as we open up more PBL hours, hopefully we'll get more use of the building and more feedback from the museum staff, the docents and the commissioners here. So I would hope that as well that once we open up those open house hours for PBL, that some of the commissioners can go by and check it out on that those Saturdays just to see how that's operating and give us feedback as well. So on this, you'll see the review costs for floor repairs, review for 88 access to second floor, and review our process for the digital tours. So I think that's going to be a highlight, is having a digital tour available for folks and having a docent there to help people out that need access where we can't. We don't currently have a ramp or an elevator to get there to the second floor. And I'll go into, I'll just go into programs. Expand the path of history. This is the one I spoke of earlier, where there's currently the RFP being finalized and getting reviewed by the city, and piloting 2 new heritage walks, cultivating understanding of history of marginalized communities. This needs to be finished by this coming, this fiscal year 2023. So I think that's we should have to put on highlight here. The May 2023 is the grant deadline. And we do not have, that's under programs. You'll see it's not under facilities because we did not get the funding for the actual signage and we didn't get the funding for additional markers. So it's a program at this time. And I think we have to discuss with a subcommittee or ad hoc subcommittee for this, of how we're going to move forward possibly, or just bring it to the full commission. We have a 23-24 to annually advise on music programs, as we don't have our 20-hour position filled right now. I don't feel comfortable at this time adding that to 2022, 2023, because right now we're working on Constitution reenactment, and we have CETA, Christmas in the Adobes coming up for this December. And once we have some more identified of kind of our project needs, we can start discussing this. And I've sent out a couple emails to commissioners getting feedback regarding review and application process. And we can discuss that too. And then annually advise on art programs. And this could be over at the conference center. These are different art programs. So, and then as well as the public art utility box in there. And so then we go to 23-24, the public art master plan. And this is, once we get this is also for next year, because we have the, at the end of 2023 is when we figure we're going to have the finalized report for the path of history. And so that's going to help us build on what the art master plan, and I believe on there as well. And public celebrations, we put these as ongoing and annual, just so we didn't lose track of them. And as we spoke of earlier, commissioners to service liaisons between the commission and appropriate city or county organizations, but also outreach events, I think is great. And commissioners may serve as docents and volunteers for year-round museum activities and events. And if anybody is looking to be a docent, please let Jordan know so we can fill out some hours at the POM as well. And the annual events like Christmas in the Adobes, History Fest, California Constitution reenactment. And I think History Fest, we don't have a plan for this year, but I think we have to, as we're building out the kind of the roundtable events with different history organizations, we'll build this up in future years. So happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure Jordan can probably help me out with something if I can't answer it.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments? Bill?
I think it's a very good chart. Thanks for doing it. I think one additional column we can have on the right are subcommittee members. I don't know if I think we have most of them appointed already, but if we can include who are the subcommittee members. A minor thing, Lisa just has one S in it. And I thought actually we had discussed the possibility of the music series starting in the spring of 23. I'm sorry if I missed that, but did you say that
It's not feasible to start.
At this time, I don't, it's something I think we could relook at, but if I don't have the person in the position, it's hard for me to state its possibility. I want to make sure I have somebody on staff available to do that. And since I hadn't figured out the 20-hour position, and
Okay,
that was the position that's going to be helping out with some of those other projects, I think once we get that person in there, so we can look at that.
yeah, I know it does require some staff work. Maybe the commission can help out too. I think the first part, I guess you're saying the first part is, do we have enough staff to do it? But the second part then was simply to go out, how much money is in the remaining budget? And then we send out a letter to the past donors and ask them to contribute. But right now, Brian, you're saying it really depends on the staff. It's something that you can't put on Jordan right now. And
Right. Yeah. I think at this time, I don't feel comfortable adding an additional project like that just to Jordan. As of right now, Jordan's doing consistent tours of making sure everything's okay at Presidio, going by, Slope Monument or going by Sarah Monument, and just doing kind of his tours as well, and going to the vaults and checking in. So it's like, it's going in even into 30 hours. He's doing a consistent roundabout kind of a thing. And then also coordinating our docents, coordinating schedules, working with service learners. So once we get a little bit more staff on board that can help him out with that, I think that's going to let us figure out what capabilities we have in there. And I think that'd be great. Because also anytime we have any events, we have to coordinate who's coming in from the staff for those nights, like who comes in the staff that night, anytime we have a program.
I ask for clarification, because I think Bill's idea about another column, doesn't that go against this stuff about
Your microphone.
not having standing committees? You can't, I would think you wouldn't be able to have, that would in essence be establishing standing committees if you put the names in the strategic plan.
Yeah, actually, my understanding is we have only one subcommittee, at this point, and that's the strategic plan group. All the rest have been disbanded. And so the question is, in my mind, which of these projects are we going to work on? You know, number one, number two, number three, so that we can put together short-term subcommittees that can help move those projects along? Or are all these things going to be done by staff?
Right, and I would say, I think, I don't know if everyone else can hear the siren on the, if everyone's listening online. But I would say for subcommittee members, I wouldn't put that on there because then we would have to vote on all of these, especially because so many of these are 23 and 24. They are future years, and I don't think we want to assign all of the subcommittees ahead of time. But if there is a specific plan, like the worker shacks and Bruce Arisway, for example, we don't have like a subcommittee for that because we don't have a specific project scope that we're working on, right? I don't want it just to be like, I think before it was of a subcommittee on the worker shacks. If there's a subcommittee for a specific role, like the strategic plan is working on these items to figure out what the priorities are. But if there is either a group or an ad hoc subcommittee that focused on a specific grant, I think that might be different. And I can get clarification from the city, assistant city manager and city attorney on that.
Yeah,
So
but
I don't know if I answered your question, Jared, but I would say that, you know, with those things, if we set this aside, setting these aside as priorities, we should be able to figure out what we want to really focus on. If we have Colton Hall, if we have worker shacks and coming in and path of history, whether we do, for example, on the path of history, do we bring this in as a public comment and discussion? And so that's part of the thought for an RFP, is bringing that on as the person hosts community meetings, or the person comes to the full commission meeting to talk about things. So we could have commissioners come to a planning meeting or discussion as long as there's not a quorum of members. Correct.
yes.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's how I feel. So
We can't have, if we have the commission as a whole, we have to abide by the Brown Act. But let's take, for instance, the worker shacks thing. At some point, it seems to me, we have to flesh out the scope of what we need to do, you know, the mural, the statue, the shacks, and where we're going to get the money, either internally or externally. And it seems to me that we need a small group to come up with a plan, or is that something the staff is going to do and we simply react to it?
So my understanding, I think what we would want to do is get a budget together of what actually needs to happen. You know, so if we can get a report about this is how much it would cost to get this statue repaired, or this is what we need for the worker shacks. And then as well as the mural, and bring it here to the commission. The commission could I think give the staff feedback on what actually we need to do. What are the guidance? Do you want to go forward with we can present different options. So if people want to vote as a group on the comment of, do we want to recreate the current mural? Do you want to put it on or do you want to do a photo replica of the original painting? You know, so those kind of things, if we present options going forward for you, I think it's something we could do on the staff work about doing the research, because the staff are going to have to work with Public Works or different people, either hire a historian or somebody that's going to do the work to identify what actually needs to be done, and then writing the grants. That depends on, like I said, regarding working with getting feedback from city attorney and assistant city managers. Once we're ready for a plan, does that activate the ability to have an ad hoc subcommittee or not to work on something like that, to draft a grant or a proposal? Or would that just be on staff? And I'll have to get clarification on that.
Anybody else have questions?
Well, we only have 5 members present, but I strongly believe that we ought to have a subcommittee on Colton Hall. We've discussed that. There's about various possibilities that we should do at Colton Hall. And we should sit down with Jordan and as his time permits and go over that and then, set up a priority. I also think once the consultant, or we should be involved in the selection of the consultant for the Path of History subcommittee. And I believe both of those could be ad hoc committee. I think where the city attorney was involved with, take the music series, where we had the same subcommittee members meeting every year and reviewing that. That almost becomes a standing committee. And Brian and I have talked about some ways of dealing with that. But I do believe a subcommittee would work. The subcommittee would work very well on Colton Hall and on the Path of History. And that should be an ad hoc committee.
And just clarification, ad hoc committees can only be in existence for 6 months, though? Right?
No, I don't think so. It can't be an ongoing one. Like, for example, this Path of History, I think, would deal with the area around Pearl Street and the tennis courts and East Village. And then we have another one for this area. It shouldn't be going on and on and on. I mean, that's a good question, John, but I think a better example is the music series, where we have a same subcommittee meeting every year on the music, or a subcommittee meeting, the same subcommittee members meeting every year on art. In a way, I think the city attorney is concerned about those. But I think if it's just one particular project, I'm not sure why it has to be time sensitive.
Well, maybe that was my misunderstanding. I thought specific limited project that was time sensitive. Otherwise, it's not an ad hoc committee, it's a standing committee.
Right. And
But whether it takes 6 months or a year, that's a big project, the Path of History, for example, and Colton Hall. Those are big projects.
I go back one step because of my own ignorance, but what's the problem with having, I mean, I agree you should review every year, the people who are on committees, but why can't you have a standing committee?
I don't see a big problem with that. It's just a Brown Act. It's more work for staff.
it's public meeting. And so basically it's trying to keep as much of the discussion public as possible for representation. So that if there's other choices and feedback, that we just have more opportunities for the public to comment.
But
on-
I thought that, with 3 members, which is less than a quorum, how does that constitute a public meeting? I guess that was my,
So I'm just saying the reason to have to limit instead of the standing committee is that discussions of things should be open to the public as part of the Brown Act, as the spirit of the Brown Act, to have as many discussions open and to the public with their, I would say things like, so for example, Colton Hall. Colton Hall is a very broad subject. So if we just had a Colton Hall subcommittee, Colton Hall's been here, for over 150 years, right? So it's about like, you could just have a Colton Hall subcommittee until something happens. But if there's a ad hoc subcommittee focused on a specific goal, which was a collection assessment, that's a collection assessment project for Colton Hall, where there's maybe a report that comes back to the commission. I think that's different. That's just different in my perspective. And I have to, like I said, clarify that with city attorney and the city manager's office. But so for example, like if we just had a Colton Hall standing committee, that they were the only commissioners discussing Colton Hall, other commissioners may not be privy to everything else going on, because you can't discuss it all, those subcommittee meetings unless you're here at the session. So it's about what can we offer at the sessions, or what can we discuss, or just having a discussion about Colton Hall here as all the commissioners are here if questions do come up, and maybe we agendize something regarding Colton Hall. If there's specific activity that you want feedback on to discuss with Jordan, maybe we do this here, and then we have an opportunity for public comment via Zoom, via the phone, or people in person here. So that's my understanding of it.
I have a question, comment. I'm trying to understand how we're going to get anything done. We have 1 employee and 7 commissioners. if it's just one employee reporting to the commission every month, it's gonna be a slow slog on any project. Whereas if we have subcommittees defined for specific purposes, not the broad, the whole building, but whatever it is, the historic structure report or something, then we can make more progress in the subcommittee meetings, which will then be briefed in public, and the public has an opportunity to comment on them. The difference between the public getting to comment on everything or the public commenting at certain points in the development. If we want to get anything done, they can't comment on it, everything, is my opinion. So I'm having trouble with the Brown Act, the way that it was defined to us and how long our committees could stand, because I don't think we can do work on it.
And I'll just respond. I'll have to follow up because we have specific projects where we'll need commission assistance on. One is that once we get the RFP and for the path of history, right? We definitely need commission assistance on that. And once we go forward with any kind of collection assessment for Colton Hall, we need to see the process for that. So I will follow up with that. But like I said, I don't have the answer for that right now, but those are two specific projects.
Would it be helpful to have somebody from the city attorney's office come to one of our meetings and answer questions?
I don't know their schedule. I mean, I'll reach out to them if we have
No,
specific
yeah,
questions.
but does anybody think that's worth
No, I think it's a good idea. We can have that item on the agenda, appointment of ad hoc subcommittees for the two items that we've talked about, and say, this is our approach, and have the assistant, I mean, how many city attorneys do we have? Don't we have two or three?
I believe we have three right now. The one just joined.
So one of them can come on the first item on the agenda at 4 o'clock and answer any questions we have.
I think, but I'll add, if there's a specific question that I can ask them ahead of time, it's going to be helpful for me to do that. So if we have like the creation of subcommittees or the ad hoc subcommittees, anything that I can add.
Yeah,
with
well, I
this.
think the two we mentioned as examples.
Yeah.
Where we're dealing with specifics of Colton Hall, and then where we're dealing with the path of history, which is going to go on a lot longer than 6 months with a consultant that, and again, I think the commission as a whole feels those could be ad hoc committees, just as John stated.
I think what you're feeling is some of the frustration among some of the commission members that we're not getting anything done. We've been sort of a placeholder for the last 2-3 years. And we lost our staff. And now we have limited staff, and therefore projects are not coming. And I think there are a number of us that would like to see some of these projects move forward. And I think the feeling is that subcommittees could help Jordan and you to begin to identify the nitty-gritty so that we can begin moving them.
I'll also add that the funding is also a challenge presently for all of these. So looking at these, if we can find the funding for anything we want to go forward with, because the collection assessment is just going to be that. It's just going to be an assessment, you know, what's going to be needed and the cost assessment for that. So
And
we'll have
again,
to look forward.
yeah, again, I think that's where the commission members can be a help, because they can help identify where these funds might come from and begin assisting in some ways to get those things moving. All right. Any other questions at the moment? This is a public appearance item, and so if there's anyone that would like to comment or address the commission on this subject of our strategic plan.
There are no public comments, Chair Evans.
Okay, so we have no comments. So the question is to adopt the plan as described. Do we have a motion?
I so move.
I'll
Second.
second.
John second.
That'd be quick.
Any further comment or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Abstentions. Thank you, gentlemen. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. And so it's time for commissioner comments. Bill?
I have one. I just found out today that the Maritime Museum, which has gone through various iterations, the last being the Dolly exhibit tied in with a magic show, that's all gone supposedly. And so I was emailing with the current president of Monterey History and Art, and they're looking at various possibilities of going there. So I think some maritime stuff. They have a tremendous collection of Joe Mora that they acquired, and I thought actually that was going to go to Casa Serrano and have a sort of Joe Mora exhibit, but they're looking at that. But just to invite everybody, they're having their annual meeting at the theater this Sunday, October 9th at 2 p.m. And their president and the other board members are going to kick around what's going to happen with that museum.
What's the relationship between history and art and the city? Does the city owns the building or?
No, the city owns the ground. The Maritime Museum, that was done by, what the heck's his name? Gordon Paul Smith and his wife, they raised the money. So they built that building, and there's an agreement between the city and MHAA that I think the city takes it over at some time in the future. And it was originally designated as a Maritime Museum. That's where I think the city turned their eyes away from that and allowed it to be converted to this Dolly Museum with a magic theater and the gift shop. And there was nothing in there about maritime at all. So, any change from what it's now to what it will be will have to be at least reviewed by the city staff and possibly our commission and possibly the council, unless they fit completely within the terms of that agreement. So the city does own the land. And if the MHA, at one time they were talking almost about giving up the building, then it would have reverted to the city.
But thank you for clarifying that.
John?
I have an idea. It's a museum. The city of Monterey does not have a city museum. We've talked about that occasionally, one-on-one.
Yep.
And thought it would be a good idea to agendize so the entire commission could talk about whether we should even think about this or how we're going to do it. Been to a number of cities that have had what they call city museums.
Sure.
And it ticks the box on the maritime component because the history of Monterey involves the sea.
Yeah.
I think it would be a win-win.
It
we
could
could
be,
partner.
if you take the mural by on Pacific Street on the back of Portola Hotel, which kind of encapsulates all the history of Monterey, put all those pieces together, and that could be a city museum. And you could sell city, they have a city store within the city museum. Charleston is a very good example of that. So I'm going to the annual meeting. If you're not there, I'll mention that too. And I've heard just through the grapevine that, there's been a lot of discussion about having an Italian museum. It covers all the facets of that, including, of course, a heavy emphasis on the fishing industry. And they've been looking at a place, and I know one or two of their members have talked about that going in there. So it's going to be something for the board to consider on that. At one time, the Jazz Museum took a darn good look at that. Now the problem there is they wanted their own building, but personally I thought that would have been a heck of a use there if you would have had the Jazz offices there and then have used Custom House Plaza for concerts almost every week or whatever. But they decided to drop that because I think they were looking for their own building. I mean, they wanted to own the building.
Tim,
I have some
Oh,
other
John,
comments if I may.
go ahead, John.
I'd like to thank Deja for the good and remarkably quick work she has done. Thank you very much. We appreciate the work you did. And also Jordan, we talked about, we have one person working and we have all these commissioners. That man has done a remarkable amount of work when he was,
Your microphone.
thank you, thank you. When he was working less than 30 hours, it's going to be amazing how much he gets done in 30 hours. And if we ever employ him full time, which would be wonderful, we'd be in very good shape, I think. And I just reiterate comments we have made before on information sharing. The city of Monterey does not do a good job with other, between and among commissions and staff, and events go on in the city of Monterey by a number of organizations that involve history and art, culture, etc. And you read about it in the newspaper after it has happened. And I'm not blaming anybody here. I'm just thinking citywide, we need to do a better job of keeping the various entities in the city administration informed. Thank you.
No, I'm good. I got it.
I certainly agree with my colleagues on all fronts. John,
No further comments, thanks.
and with that, I think we'll declare the meeting closed.
Good job.